This episode of the Flush Podcast is brought to you by Onyx Hunt, Waltons, Marshwear Clothing, Ruffland Kennels, Black Gold, and by Game Virtual Shooting Simulators. Today, we're talking about extreme winter weather and how wildlife survive in it or how they do not survive it. My guest is RJ Grouse, an Upland Game Biologist with North Dakota Game and Fish. There may not be a colder place on planet Earth right now than the windswept plains of North Dakota, which is why Rodney is the perfect guest to help us dissect this topic. Welcome to another episode of the Flush Podcast. I am Travis Frank. I'm your host. Big Al is our producer. We're back here in the loafing area. I know Alex doesn't like it when I call it that, but I'm calling it. I'm wearing my hoodie. I'm wearing a jacket. It's cold out right now.
Your office is freezing cold, too.
My office is possibly one of the coldest places on planet Earth right now, and I have to wear a snowmobile suit. I got to wear heated boots. I have to wear heated jackets.
I did have the door open this morning, to be fair. I was bringing some stuff in. That partially is my fault.
I feel like somehow there's a trick being played on me where you guys have inserted a cooler of some, like a cold air vent from outside into my office. So I'm not getting the sunshine, but I'm getting the wind chill. And it's wicked. This fits perfectly with today's conversation. Obviously, I don't have to tell you that it's been cold outside, and we are in the middle. Maybe we're out of a little bit of this actual polar vortex. We recently had temperatures in Minnesota that plummeted below 30 degrees, below negative 30 in different parts of the state. So to celebrate the cold, I figured I'm going to look up a couple of records. In Minnesota, the coldest official temperature recorded. Alex, can you guess what it is?
Negative 51. Actually, well, yeah, I would say, well, up north, I think this weekend it got down to negative 61 is up north is what it was saying.
Oh my gosh, Alex. No.
I'm sorry, I was watching the news. That's what the weatherman said.
No, that's wind chill.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I get confused sometimes.
It's not that hard.
I'm going to say negative 30.
That's the coldest ever?
I feel like without wind, like not including the wind chill, yeah.
Oh my goodness. RJ, I'm going to bring you into the conversation because we need to have somebody with a little more knowledge.
Travis,
here.
I've only been around for 23 years, okay?
I know, but I mean, think about this for a second. Just think a little bit before you speak, buddy.
Okay, what is it?
We're talking in the Midwest?
We're talking, Minnesota's coldest official recorded temperature.
Minnesota.
RJ Gross, you are from North Dakota, and I'm going to get to North Dakota's next, but I want you to take a stab. What do you think the coldest actual air temperature that has been documented is?
Oh, man, it's got to be in the negative 40s. That'd be my guess.
Colder. It's negative 60.
Really?
And for those of you...
Okay, I said that.
No, you didn't. You said...
I said up north, they were saying negative 60.
You said 61 below last weekend, and that's not true.
Well, that was just the wind chill. So I was assuming that's probably been that cold before, you know.
The wind chill is a different topic. And we'll get into wind chills as well today, but the official record cold was measured in Tower, Minnesota on February 2nd, 1996. Another reading of negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit was also recorded in Embarrass, Minnesota on the exact same date. These represent the coldest official air temperatures in state history. Let's head over to North Dakota. RJ, what do you think is the coldest official air temperature ever documented in the state of North Dakota?
Negative 70. It seems it's colder over here.
It does seem colder, but that's probably because of your wind.
Yeah.
It was exactly the same temperature. Your record is also negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 51.1 degrees Celsius for those of us listening in Canada. This occurred in Parshall, which is Mount Trail County, on February 15th, 1936. This extreme cold event occurred during the same year, believe it or not, as the state's record high
God.
temperature.
Which was what?
They didn't give me that information. Yep. So let's move a little bit outside of our little bubble here. The coldest temperature recorded in the United States of America. RJ, you go first, and then Alex, you take a guess.
In the United States. So that's got to include Alaska. It's got to be, I'm going to go in the negative 70s again.
Okay, Alex.
Well, I feel like it's got to be Alaska, but something, part of me tells me it's like a trick question. It's going to end up being the Minnesota negative 60. I don't know why.
What's your official answer?
I'll go with RJ and say negative 70. I bet it was in Alaska still.
The coldest temperature ever recorded in the United States of America is negative 80 degrees Fahrenheit.
God.
Measured at Prospect Creek, Alaska on January 23rd, 1971. This record-breaking cold snap occurred in the Endicott Mountains north of the Arctic Circle.
I mean, how do you even survive that? Like the heat, your house wouldn't work at that point? I mean...
I don't know for sure how they do it. So I was in the Arctic Circle one time when it was so brutally cold that I wondered how any life existed. I will tell you, everything was white. Everything was white.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievably beautiful, unbelievably bright, but it was ridiculously cold. And I remember I was out there in the middle of the frozen tundra, and I was hunkered down in this little bush that was also white. And I looked over, and sure enough, there he was, a little ptarmigan, all huddled up, as white as the snow. And if it didn't move its beak and its eyes, probably wouldn't have ever seen it. And he was only 5 feet away. And he's like, "What are you doing here?"
I just can't believe they can survive when it gets that cold.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Wildlife, wild critters are amazing. I have one more before we dive into how these animals and these creatures survive. The coldest temperature recorded on planet Earth.
Oh, God.
Uh-huh.
Oh, boy.
Mm-hmm. What would you boys like to take a stab at this? The coldest temperature ever recorded on planet Earth.
RJ, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
What was the one in, how much was it in Alaska?
Negative
Alaska
80.
was negative 80 Fahrenheit. Yep.
I feel like it's got to be somewhere
So
around
negative 93.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say in the negative 90s. But honestly, I could believe, I don't know, negative 100 just sounds so out of this world. I'm going to go in the negative 90s.
Okay. The coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth, according to Wikipedia, is that's where I got all this information from. Well, when I did the AI search, this is what came up, and then I checked it on Wikipedia too, and I checked it a couple, and everyone said the same thing.
At least you cited you checked your source, multiple sources.
There you go. So the coldest temperature ever directly recorded on Earth is negative 128.6 degrees. Negative 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 89.2 degrees Celsius, measured at the Soviet Vostok Station in Antarctica on July 21st, 1983. This extreme low temperature was captured via ground-based measurements. While the Vostok reading is the official ground-based record, satellite data has identified even lower surface temperatures with readings reaching below 135 degrees Fahrenheit in East Antarctica. I assume there were no stations there to document it.
Or so the people aren't here anymore to document that.
Mm-hmm. The coldest temperature in the northern hemisphere was negative 93.3 degrees Fahrenheit, recorded in Greenland in December 1991. So there we have it. That's some pretty unbelievably cold weather. If you were outside last week in that polar vortex when the wind hit, when they tell you that you only have a few minutes of exposed skin, they mean it. And so I'm driving down the highway and I'm bucking into this wind, and I look over and there's this small area with some trees and some cattails, and I see these turkeys, wild turkeys, and they're sitting up on tree limbs. about 4 feet off the ground, and they're just sitting there, on the branch. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I know you roost. I know you go up in the treetops in the spring when I try to harvest you, but what are you doing there right now? And it got me thinking, how does all of these individual creatures, how do each one of them survive? Because they're different, right, RJ? They're different
absolutely.
in their ways they do it. And I'm wondering, man, if I were you, I would be hunkered down in those cattails. The cattails were right there. They were literally a couple of feet away from the cattails that have snow in them. And I'm thinking, I'd burrow in there. But those birds were all sitting on the tree limb, and the wind was blowing about 40 miles an hour. It was air temperature at that particular moment, 16 below zero air temperature. So you throw that 40 mile an hour wind into that, and you do the math on how cold it really was.
Yeah, no kidding.
It hurt my bare skin to stand there and look into it, which I did for about 8 minutes shortly afterwards. I had to film a little social media video that Alex made fun of several times.
You look so miserable on the lake.
Yeah, I know. And I was. And here's the thing. I had to use my bare hand, right, to hold the phone, to film this little video that I had to send off to our social media team. And I had a microphone on my chest, and the wind was cutting out the audio that I was trying to speak into it. So I had to take 4 takes. And I realized on take number 4 that my entire right hand went completely numb.
Oh, yeah.
It was burning. It was on fire. And I was out there too long in it. And so then all of these thoughts are running through my head. And I texted my buddy over at PF, Jared Wicklund, and I said, Jared, I want to talk about how did wildlife survive all of this awful weather? And I want to go beyond pheasants. I want to talk about birds. And I said, who would you recommend? And I got 2 names, but yours, RJ, was at the very top. And RJ Gross was the recommendation. I don't know if that's something to be proud of, RJ. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, if a guy's going to know winter, it's going to be the North Dakota guy. That's for sure.
Right, right.
And
so we're so cold here in Minnesota. We are, and we have records, but clearly wind makes everything so much colder. I feel like you guys really have you should be the icebox. It should not be Tower, Minnesota.
That's why I was surprised we didn't have a colder temperature. But yeah, like you said, the wind. I think it was Friday. It was 40, 50 mile an hour wind. We were in the negative 20s, regular temperature. And I thought the same, I went outside for a couple minutes just to get my dog because his feet got too cold, being outside, going to the bathroom. And there's been many times, like you talk about it, you're driving around. I think it was, our last couple winters that we haven't really had a winter. It's North Dakota standards, but 3 years ago, we had over 100 inches of snow, and that same thing. I'm driving out there; it's negative 10. All you see is white, and I think the same thing. How does anything survive in this state? And if I was out there for 10 minutes, I'd be a goner. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned the dog. It's just hilarious watching. And I don't want to watch my dog take a dump outside, but
you do.
She's trying to, right now she's trying to do it on 1 foot because she doesn't know.
She did the thing like my dogs where they're hop from foot to foot.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and so there's 2 feet on the ground, and then you're trying to lift this one up, and you try to push it out, and then get back in as quickly as you possibly can. Poor things. But this is what everything that lives in the wild has to deal with that does not migrate. So, you talk about the nasty cold, but do you currently have snow in North Dakota?
There's not much. I think we got 2-3 inches, for the most part, right across the state. There was that last little clipper that went through in the northeast. They have a little bit more. But again, luckily, knock on wood, we're having a pretty good winter so far. And that really helps as far as, like like upland birds and even white-tailed deer, things like that. When you don't have the real big snowpack that things like deer have to go through to get to food or cover to food, that helps tremendously, it's cold. North Dakota is always cold, even when we have mild winters. Even last year, we still had a week of, negative temperatures. If at least they don't have to expend energy tromping through the snow to get to food and back. That's the farther we can get into winter without that much snow, the better.
Yeah, I think really when you think about what kills more wildlife, cold or snow, it's going to be snow.
It's snow, yeah, for sure, and it's the combo is probably deadliest.
Mhm.
A lot of times, there's kind of the myth that pheasants, in particular, they starve to death. That hardly ever happens. Their bodies, they're a lot tougher than we give them credit for. That winter where we had hundreds of inches of snow, we had really good survival because it was pretty nice out temperature wise. And obviously the big improvement and heads up that they have over deer, they can fly. They don't have to go through all that snow. And
Mhm.
when we have hundreds plus inches of snow for a deer, that's a killer for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So I hunt deer in northern Minnesota, and I
Mhm.
hear stories all the time from locals. One in particular that I hear probably the most when it comes to really, really nasty cold winters. There's always this debate about should I feed a deer or should we
Mhm.
not feed the deer?
Yep.
But an example of what can happen. So you get all this snow and it's maybe 3 feet deep, 2 feet deep. It's quite a
Mhm.
bit. And then the cold on top of it. So our hearts are going out to these wild critters and we want them to survive, right? So let's put some corn out.
Yep.
Well, you put corn out, now you create an area where all the deer are coming to eat this corn. What
Yep.
follows? The wolves,
E Everything that eats the deer.
everything
Yep.
that eats them. And
Yep.
now they're out in the wide open. And
Mhm.
so, in hopes of feeding the deer to make it through winter, what ends up happening, and this is a true story that has been told several times up there in places that I hunt. In the spring, once the snow melts, you just see all the bones and carcasses from the
Oh, yeah.
deer
Yep.
that were taken down
Absolutely.
because they were more susceptible to the predators. So then I
Yep.
guess the question is, was it helpful? Did it help the deer
Mhm.
survive, or did it hurt the overall population by trying to do something good? The same can be said
Yeah.
for pheasants. When you put
Yep.
corn out, if it's out in the open, is that helping them? Is that hurting
Mhm.
them? RJ, take it from here.
Uh, for the most part, it's hurting them, because like you said, you're not just feeding your specific target. Like if you're trying to deer is a great example that we've seen, many times, even back when I was a technician working on deer depredation. A lot of times those deer, if we get a lot of snow, they're going into farmyards. Like you said, if there's 3 feet of snow, they have one path that they've trounced down that they can go. If you're feeding and then you're bringing in, coyotes, wolves, depending where you're at, if that deer has to escape off of that trail to go somewhere being chased, they're going to scatter. Try going from, basically a sidewalk onto powdered snow. I mean, they're gonna drop down in there. They're gonna get caught pretty easily. Same with pheasants. If they're coming into a pile, I would imagine if there's any type of roost anywhere close, you're gonna see 3, 4 owls. I mean, and honestly, a story from this year, a hunter out in a landowner in West North Dakota didn't get 2 quarters of wheat harvested. And I hunt pretty close to that. And I mean, when I tell you that it looked like there were snow geese getting off of these fields, that's how many pheasants were in there. I mean, it
Wow.
was it was amazing. But on every tree, there was at least 2, 3 hawks, 3, 4 owls. On every hillside, there was 2, 3 coyotes. I mean, they figure it out pretty fast.
Do you know how far those birds will travel to get to that food?
hmm in North Dakota, so say like a pheasant, their home range is a couple miles, and we're doing research right now on turkeys, where in the wintertime their home range is only about a mile, which I thought it would be a lot bigger. But I mean, like turkeys, they're kind of they're the bigger, hardier bird. But like you said, they're in the trees, and a lot of times that is because their main defense mechanism is sight and hearing things. And when they're down on the ground and it's super windy, they're kind of out in the open. They're very vulnerable. So yeah, they'll go up in the tree because they can see a lot farther.
40 years sure is a long time to be in business, and that's exactly how long Walton's has been helping America's butchers, hunters, anglers, and families prepare their meat. That is quite a milestone. And to that, I say, Walton's, congratulations on 40 years in business to your entire family. I sincerely hope that you know how hard they work to provide all of us with the right tools to process and prepare all of our hard earned meat. Walton's motto is everything but the meat for a reason. They have everything we need to process every cut of meat you can think of And after a long hunting season, I'm hoping you have a freezer full of it. If you're looking to make sausage, jerky, snack sticks, roast, you name it, Waltons can help you with the tools and the knowledge to do it right the first time. Check them out at waltons.com. And congratulations on 40 years in business. You've earned our trust. If you're looking to sharpen your upland shooting skills, or maybe your kids are starting to get into the sport like mine are, then you need to check out GAIM. That's GAIM. Our friends over there are changing the way we approach training. Their cutting-edge virtual reality hunting and shooting scenarios immerse you in the field without actually leaving your home. Whether it's game birds or clays, the GAIM system allows you to practice your shotgun mechanics, giving you real-time shot feedback that allows for instant adjustments. And it's been incredibly fun for my kids. It allows them to safely build confidence, which I know translates to success in the field. Virtual training, real results. Click the show description below to learn more, or visit their website at game.com to try for yourself. That's GAIM.com.
If you're heading out on the next hunt, don't forget the teammate who never complains and never misses, your dog. At Roughland, we built the ultimate travel system for hunting dogs and the people who run with them. It starts with our one-piece kennels, built tough to handle rough roads, cold mornings, and whatever else the season throws at you. From there, customize your system with stackable gear, food and water containers, organization trays, or insulated covers. Everything is lightweight, field-tested, and made right here in the USA. Because let's be real, we don't deserve great dogs, but great dogs, they deserve a Roughland. Visit roughlandkennels.com today and build your version of the ultimate travel system before your next flush.
So then, does the state of North Dakota take a position on feeding wildlife during the winter?
Mhm. Yeah, we say not to. It's not beneficial. There are certain situations, where say like when I mentioned they're going into farmyards, specifically deer, things like that. We do have a tag, it's called short stop feeding, where basically we'll put out, a bale or something like that halfway in between to where their winter cover is and, where they're coming to that farmyard, so we can stop them from coming all the way in. Those are, pretty rare cases, kind of last ditch effort type of thing, because, again, if it's a severe enough winter and we cut off all their food supply, obviously they're not going to make it, and we don't want that to happen. So it's a last resort.
The state of North Dakota, from what I understand, has cut back on the deer tags over the last couple of years, right?
For sure. Yeah.
What is the current condition of your deer population?
Oof, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bleak. We got hit hard by EHD 2-3 years in a row here, it seems like. And I'm in the central part of the state in Bismarck, and driving to work in the mornings, I used to have to get around deer. I bet I haven't seen a deer around Bismarck in a few years, which is too bad. And I grew up in Jamestown, where there were lots of deer, and it's just it's a thing. We're always going to come back around to it. People think that it's kind of a broken record, but also habitat. I mean, you can't ignore how much habitat we've lost. I mean, thinking about, from my time growing up, places I'll go back home and be like, that used to be 640 acres of grass. Now it's all corn and soybeans, nothing for wildlife anymore. So with the habitat and then, disease, EHD is really bad, especially in northern states. You go to like Kansas and, even as far as Texas, their deer have an immunity to it because they get it every couple of years. So it's kind of built in. Us, we have it, maybe every 10, 15 years, and our deer will get knocked back really, really bad. And then, it takes, with less habitat on the ground, it takes longer for stuff to come back.
Yeah. Do you know if you had to, given we don't have a crystal ball to see what's going to come, but if you had a good winter followed by another good winter, would you get your deer herd back? How long does that EHD keep them knocked down?
So, they've been coming back. We've had 2 really easy winters in a row, and this one's starting out well. So, they are coming back to an extent. But say like, deer back in the CRP years, when we've had a bad winter, it'll be like 5-6 years, the cycle when they kind of come back up. But, in the last, few years since that, it's already been since our first EHD outbreak, I think, was in about 2020, 2021, and there's the incline is a lot slower than it has been in the past, even with good winters.
So the current state of your pheasant population, you just talked about seeing what looked like a snow geese out there when they lifted off of the field. This has been a great pheasant hunting season in North Dakota. It's been a great one in South Dakota. It's been a great one in Minnesota and Iowa. Heck, even Nebraska and Kansas. I mean, I think a lot of hunters would say it's the year of the pheasant. And it was a great year to pheasant hunt. And obviously, we want as many of those birds to survive as possible. There are still states that have open hunting through the end of January here. So that's going to be closing up here in just a couple of days, depending on when people are listening to this podcast. I've always understood it, talking with biologists like you, RJ, that I really could try to take almost every single rooster out possible.
Oh yeah.
And that's going to help the overall population. We want as many of those hens to come through strong. Roosters are jerks. Rooster pheasants, they are just a-holes. And they'll push those
perfect description,
and they'll push those hens out of the best cover, and they'll push them away from the best food source. And if she makes it out of winter strong, she could put 12 more birds down there. So that's why I feel like, it's been good advice to try to take as many roosters off. I know a lot of landowners, and I've talked about this many times on the show, a lot of landowners that are trying to manage their property for pheasants, wild pheasants. They want to take as many roosters as they can. They invite all their friends over for the end of season rally to try to knock them down and get as many out of there as possible. Given that we've had such a good hunting season for pheasants, what is your perspective right now on the overall pheasant population going into this cold weather? And I just looked at the extended forecast. Winter's here for a little while, but that's to be expected. It's January and February. This isn't a surprise.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I mean, in North Dakota, I can speak for our pheasant metrics that we, and our spring crowing counts, they were some of the all-time high we've ever had, but, I can't remember the winters so nice back to back like we've had ever. Even looking back, like winter severity index and stuff like that, we've had a good run. And couple that with really, really good production. This last summer wasn't as good. I mean, I'm sure you probably paid attention to the news. It seemed like that Reed Timmer tornado chaser guy was in North Dakota every other day. So we had plenty of severe weather. Which, knocked them back. Oh yeah, like in the Northwest, Crosby, which is kind of a hot spot town that people have been going to. They got 2 really bad hailstorms, kind of right at peak hatch. Obviously knocked them back, but luckily they were pretty localized. But I mean, that's kind of stuff that's going to happen. But I mean, the last we've had, like I said, with our metrics, pheasants are kind of at all-time high in Minnesota. The only problem is, like when you look back, like 2008, 2009, when we harvested almost 1 million birds, our metrics are pretty much the same. As far as the number of pheasants that we have, it's just a lot harder to get to now. Like with online posting, a lot of land is posted now, so that makes it tougher. But as far as status of pheasants in North Dakota, it's about as good as it's ever been.
Being on that topic, it's been 3 years now, I think, that it's been electronically posted or able to. Yeah, in that area. How does the state feel about that? Is this where we're just going to end up staying, or is there a chance that it might change in legislation? I know you guys have some different potential laws that might be different come next hunting season out there.
Yep. I think that this is going to be the new norm, but there's definitely going to be updates, and I think legislature knew that when coming in. Like there's ideas to open it up, like say, like you only want it posted a certain time of the year, like for deer hunting. You can have that. They're going to make that option where you can have it in a time frame, which I think would help tremendously. And also, and I know, people who've been coming to North Dakota for many years, they hate it. I talked to obviously a lot of nutters and hunters coming to North Dakota. A lot of them say they won't come back because of it. But, again, just because the land is posted doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a no.
Right.
For the most part, and I always tell people, if you just knock on a door and ask, politely, a lot of times they'll let you. I mean, I've even had, and I'm a resident, I guess, but, I'll ask to hunt one property and the guy will be like, well, you don't want to go there. There's way more over here. You should go to this stuff. So it's don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah,
That's my advice, I guess. I usually give people.
I've had very similar experiences out
Mhm.
there too. A lot of times landowners, they own so much land that
Yeah.
they're posting it because the logistics of them going out there and trying to keep signs up and they're
Yes.
working on the land. They're working with their cattle or whatever it might be. And so they just post all of what they own, but they might only deer hunt on one or two parcels and they might have a
Exactly.
lot.
Yeah.
And so if
Yeah.
you can track them down, that's always the hardest
Mhm.
part. I think it's harder to
Yes.
find the landowner than it is to get their
Mhm.
permission to hunt a pheasant or a grouse or a partridge on their
Mhm.
land. If you find the guy
Yep.
or the gal,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the key. So will there be any changes to that side of it where it might be
There
easier
there
to
is. So I
contact
guess
them?
there's gonna be kind of like a instant messaging that you can sign up for. So like you go on like on X or something like that, and you'll click on the land. It's
Yep.
posted. There should be an option, hopefully coming up, that you can do, direct to text, basically, where you can ask permission. Um, there's a pretty good amount. I think it was between 30 and 40% of the landowners that have it posted actually do have their contact information on there. So
Okay.
that's helping. You know, and that was a lot more than I thought it was. When it first came out, it just seemed like it was hard to find people, and there's a lot more absentee landowners, things like that. But I've been pretty surprised how many times I could Google a person and find their phone number, and then how did you get this number? Well,
Right.
I did my homework.
Internet is a powerful
Yeah,
tool. A
yeah,
handwritten letter goes a really long way too.
that's
I
true.
had this
Yeah,
conversation a couple
yeah.
weeks ago with somebody out of state, and they've secured some really great hunting land access by just
Mhm.
handwriting letters.
Yeah.
I did catch wind yesterday of a potential change to hunting dates for non-residents coming up for waterfowl hunting in North
Yeah.
Dakota. This isn't
Yeah.
official, RJ, but it looks
Right.
like something might be proposed where non-residents might not be allowed to hunt waterfowl until the 9th day of the open season. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
Yep, it would basically be that residents get the first 2 weekends to themselves. Yes, correct. And then, like you said, that's not finalized, but our new governor, he's pretty big on that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't happen.
And this isn't something that Game and Fish proposes and then
Mhm.
pushes through.
No.
This is something that the state legislature
Mhm.
proposes and then it gets pushed through or
Correct. Yep.
killed.
Yep. And North Dakota is different from a lot of other states. A lot of states you'll hear about like wildlife commission, things like that. We don't have that. Basically everything that we do goes through legislative approval.
Yeah. And Minnesota is very much the same way in that,
Mhm.
which
Sure.
means that if you are listening to this right now and you feel strongly one way for or against it, your elected representatives and or your voice politely stated to people that are in charge of making these decisions and changes in the future are it's worth your time to send
Mhm.
them a message,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. I've been like, what's the saying? The squeaky wheel, gets the noise. There's
Mhm.
Squeaky
been
wheel gets the
lots.
grease.
There you go. Yeah. There's been plenty of regulation changes, that have been brought forth because the public wants it. It's not the dictatorship of the Game and Fish Department. We're here for the people. So if there's enough people that feel strongly about something, and we get it heard, we can make things change.
Yeah, our voices matter, and it's just a
That's right.
reminder. We've talked about this before. Same things happening, with well, there's a lot of things happening right now.
Yeah.
And just keep it in wildlife in winter. Let's get back
Hmm.
to the birds and the
Yeah.
animals.
Yep.
So right now it is 10:46 a.m. as we record this Central Time in Minnesota. What is a
Mhm.
pheasant doing at 10:46 a.m. right now in Minnesota or North Dakota or South
Mhm.
Dakota or Iowa? It's probably I think it okay, my thermometer here says 2 degrees, but
Mhm.
I'm going to put 20-mile-an-hour winds on top of that. So what is that
Yeah.
bird doing
Yeah.
right now to survive?
Yep. And they're mid-morning, so they should have already went out, got their food right away. Now they're back in. They're in those cattails. They're in brushy cover, probably with the sun shining down on them. They like to be kind of south-facing type of things. But hopefully they're in cattails because I know I'm sure you've been in many cattails before. I know I've fallen down in cattails before. You get down in there, it's surprising how warm it is. You're out of the wind. There's excellent thermal cover. So I mean, that's kind of our limiting factor in North Dakota. I've always tell people is winter cover, especially cattail sloughs, because it's great. Obviously late season hunting. That's what a lot of hunters focus on.
Yep.
But there's a reason, because that's what keeps pheasants alive in the winter time.
Yep. But the food itself is not in the cattails. Is there any food for pheasants in cattails?
No, there isn't. They don't eat anything in there. Hopefully the cattail sloughs are pretty close to, corn is usually kind of the mother load of carbs they need for wintertime. Soybeans, they'll eat it, but they're kind of like, like waterfowl. They really don't get much from soybeans. They don't digest it efficiently enough. So, the small grains and corn that they're going to be by, and they will, if they have to, they'll switch to, like little waste seeds, berries like snowberries, things like that. They will be in that if that's close. But the closer that is to their winter cover, the better, the higher chance that they will survive.
Do you know how many kernels of corn a pheasant must eat each day?
I don't. I do remember South Dakota did a study on that where, they were basically force feeding pheasants, a couple of them, a couple hundred kernels of corn a day, but it's really not very much. It's basically a handful of corn can get a pheasant through for a long time. There's been studies done where they don't necessarily need to eat as long as they limit their activity for over 20 days, which is pretty impressive. And that's why, a lot of times they'll survive, this couple days we've had of really bad weather, of cold temperatures. As long as they just sit, they're out of the elements, they don't move very much, they're not going to starve to death. The main thing they do is freeze, where we get those, say like in 97 is kind of always the big one, where we had, I think it was a snowstorm every Wednesday. It lasted till Saturday. When you get those days that they're hunkered down, snow is coming on you, the wind's blowing, those are pheasant killers for sure.
What's the temperature that freezes them?
The temperature, it's below, I think, if you get below zero, for the most part, that's when trouble starts happening.
Well, we didn't get above zero for about 4 days until today. I think today, maybe yesterday, we got just slightly above here where I live, but we didn't get above zero for a while there. So that's where my heart goes out to these creatures out there. And I also think too, if you're going to take your dog out, this is probably not the weather to take them for a run. You probably don't want to, absolutely not. You don't want to mess with wildlife. You don't want to mess with deer. You don't want to mess with the birds that are out there. If they have a spot picked out to survive right now, you probably don't want to mess with them. I know hunting season in South Dakota is still open. So there are hunters, and I got emails from some of them that were out this past weekend, and the saving grace there, one of them that messaged me flushed 2,500 estimated pheasants Saturday and Sunday in 2 days of hunting out there. So he may have enough surplus there
I would say
to carry over.
He's got some extras that he can deal with.
So you mentioned that corn is number one for a pheasant. Then soybeans aren't as high in carbs. They can't process them quite as much.
Yeah, it's kind of like waterfowl. The studies have been done that it doesn't digest. They don't get as much energy from that. So, like a number two would definitely be small grains like wheat. That's ideal, yeah. And unfortunately, the landscape is full of soybeans. I'm not saying that they will starve eating soybeans, just they have to eat a lot more to get kind of the equivalent nutrients out of that.
Is there a certain point where you become concerned about pheasants in particular? We'll get to other animals and birds in a minute, but for pheasants, if you see them out on the side of a road at a certain time of the day, or you see them out feeding at a certain time of the day, does that worry you, and why?
No, the only time I really get worried is, say, like we've had a winter that's starts in October, and we've had snow continuously, and then we don't really have those thaw breaks, and then we'll get a spring snowstorm, because those are not just a pheasant killer. I mean, those are wildlife killers. That March, April snow that I'm sure you've seen, it's heavier, it's thicker, it's wetter. You get a foot of that on top of having winter the whole time. survival plummets.
Right. I mean, they've made it through the cold. They've survived, but now their fat is just whittled down. They don't have the endurance to make it through the marathon. And then, I mean, maybe you would equate it to running a marathon. You get to the very end, and then somebody dunks you under water for 5 minutes. Yeah, exactly.
The very last 5 miles are uphill. Yeah.
Right. So then what about sharp-tailed grouse? They're the native bird out there on the prairie. What do they need to survive? It's not cattails, is it?
No, it's snow. It's interesting. A grouse, rough grouse. You have a lot of those in Minnesota. They burrow in the snow, and I don't know if you've ever had it before, but probably the closest I've ever been scared, flying guns is, I'm late season pheasant hunting, going through a snowbank, and it explodes with grouse. I mean, I can't describe it. You have to experience it yourself before, but a snowbank that comes out, there's 20 grouse come out of there. But that's what they do. They burrow down in there. As a kid, you make an igloo. You ever been in one of those? It's nice and warm in there. So that's how they get out of the elements. So even these winters where they're it's nice out, they don't have that. So a lot of times they're in like the buckbrush, the snowberries, the dense woody cover that's out on the prairies. That's what they utilize.
Well, that's where my thought goes to when you talked about the snow, and I was going to get to the rough grouse coming up. I've been texting buddies up north, and I don't care how cold it gets. I want to know how much snow do you have?
Yeah.
And I want to know if that snow is soft. Right. Because those birds, can you, RJ, explain how a grouse snow roosts? How they get there?
I mean, honestly, they if you ever looking at a grouse feet, they have those fully feathered feet, so they can handle the cold, and they just use their feet, burrow down in there, and that's where they're at.
Do some of them, though, dive in like a dive bomb?
I don't think so. I would never say never in the world of nature, but I've never seen that.
Okay, gotcha. Because if it's hard packing, they go diving in, kill themselves. Right? Maybe. So the bird goes in the snow. How long does a sharp-tailed grouse stay under the snow?
Most of the day. They'll come out, kind of at daybreak again. They'll go and feed. They'll go back, sit in there till night. Go back out and feed before night, and then go back in their burrow.
It's a fascinating thing when you see these little tiny eyes sticking up in the snow. And all of a sudden, whoop, here comes a head poking up, and then here comes another one. If you've seen it before, you think, "Wow, you guys are amazing!" They are. So then they don't have it right now. They don't have the snow out there. So are you concerned about sharp-tailed grouse?
Yeah, I am a little bit for sure. And they we're not exactly sure what happened last year. They had not real good production. We were pretty wet during their peak hatch, but we still should have had a lot of adults. And we even had that in our spring surveys. Then come hunting season, they were just gone. We think, and we've got a few blood samples that we've taken, that they had West Nile. Because as a grouse species, and North Dakota had all-time high for human cases of West Nile. So that's kind of a...
Are you serious?
Yeah.
What numbers would that be?
Oh, I'd have to look again, but it was, I saw it, every week it seemed, there were more cases. We were at a record high. A lot of that was in the east where most of our population is. But, it's kind of a educated guess that we had because grouse are very susceptible to that. Look at our sage grouse for real example. When we used to have them, they got taken back and they never really recovered from the big West Nile outbreak. So it can happen. And, most of our Western North Dakota, our Badlands, where a lot of our grouse are, that's where we think it happened. And we've got that being tested. So we'll see. So, coming back, worried about grouse. Population is kind of coming down from a high. We're not going to have the snow cover, so, when it's -40, a pheasant can go into cattails. A grouse doesn't have their snowbank. The woody cover, a lot of those, at least you're not out in the elements, but you're not exactly as protected as you would be in that snowbank. So there's worry. But like you said, it's supposed to get a little bit nicer here. So fingers crossed.
When the hunt is on, your dog's performance matters. Every step, every sprint, every retrieve. It takes stamina, strength, and focus, and that starts with what's in their bowl. Black Gold dog food is crafted for active dogs, delivering the balanced nutrition they need to power through the season and beyond. Because a good diet isn't just fuel for today's hunt, it's the foundation for all-season performance. Visit blackgoldpet.com to learn more and find a retailer near you. Black Gold. Unleash adventure.
Marshwear Clothing is one of the hottest clothing brands in the outdoors today. Marshwear designs clothing for the pursuit of good times and the great outdoors. Their lineup is versatile from field to hunt camp to a night out on the town. They have field staples like the Westwood jacket and long haul pants and everyday classics like the Sullivan Tech hoodie. Marshwear designs clothes to keep you looking and feeling your best while you're in the uplands and on everyday adventures. They have classic styles updated with modern day materials, and I can tell you firsthand the fit and quality is top of the line. Their focus is on the details that matter to us in the field because they too live the outdoor lifestyle. Marshwear Clothing, built for the pursuit of good times in the outdoors. Check them out at marshwearclothing.com. Here's a scouting tip that might just help you find a few more wild birds. First, grab your phone and then open up the onX Hunt app. In the bottom right corner, click on the 2D button and then select 3D. Then place 2 fingers on the screen of your phone and slide them up together at the same time. After that, zoom into a property that you've hunted before or one that you've never been to and take a look at the terrain in 3D. I bet you'll see a few nooks and crannies that will hold birds out of the elements. I bet you'll see the land in a dimension that you never thought possible. These are the details that matter when you're putting miles on the truck and on your boots during a hunt. onX Hunt is the ultimate tool for us bird hunters. It shows our position on planet Earth, land boundaries, land topography, burns, forests that have been logged, weather, and a whole bunch of other features that will make you a better hunter. If you've never tried the onX Hunt app, then you can download a free 7-day trial to help you understand why hunters like myself simply can't hunt without it. Know where you stand with onX Hunt.
Hey,
Go-
Trav.
Yeah.
According to the CDC and Health and Human Services North Dakota, there was between 79 and 86 cases by late September, October of the West Nile virus in humans.
That's quite a few.
In 2025.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you look back and see how many there were the years prior?
Well, I know that marked the highest count since 2018.
Okay.
Cases reported in 23 counties.
Look at us solving some mysteries here. RJ, then when does this information come out? Is there going to be any news release about West Nile and sharptailed grouse coming from your department?
So. We didn't unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of samples of it. So, and I'll put it out. Our department does like webcasts and things like that. Now, like we'll do for spring surveys and things like that. And I'll mention we should have the results back by then, which will probably be mid-May to early June-ish. That's probably.
I'm going to make a note to follow up with you on that, just to get some clarity, because I know a lot of bird hunters that hunt out in your neck of the woods were trying to understand why the numbers were down. And actually, we talked about last week, our guest is from Nevada, and I don't know if you're familiar with Chucker in Nevada, but 2 years ago, they had possibly the highest population of Chucker maybe ever in America. And they had perfect winter, maybe the best they've had in our lifetime out there, and great nesting conditions. And they didn't have a hatch. And so nobody really knows why, but they don't really have any agencies out there studying Chucker.
Sure.
And there's not a lot of information on it. Now my brain's spinning. Do you think that West Nile could potentially affect Chucker?
It's possible. I don't think Chucker as much, because our gray partridge, Hungarian partridge, they're what they call old world birds, over from Europe. They don't really get it just because they've been exposed to it a lot longer than say like a grouse. West Nile, it's fairly newish, I guess, when it comes to diseases over here. So like pheasants, partridge, turkeys don't really get it, but those grouse species do. But yeah, there's obviously something. I was just out in Oregon, and it was the same thing. Last year, you should have been here last year. Their Chucker is all-time high And I walked till I was blue in the face, and I didn't see a single trucker out there. And in places where the biologists were, it's full last year. I don't know what to tell you. So
Well,
there's
isn't the
something
West
there.
Nile virus transmitted by don't mosquitoes typically carry that
Mosquitoes, yep,
stuff? So I mean, if you're in a
exactly.
place that doesn't have a high population of mosquitoes,
Right? Yeah.
So we can probably hypothesize that that's not the reason for the chucker.
I wouldn't
hatch.
think so, but
Okay.
there's got to be something though, and there's other diseases. Obviously avian influenza is a big one now, but the chucker, there shouldn't really be like where migrating waterfowl are coming through type of thing.
Right.
But the disease world, that's over my head too.
Yeah, because if you think about the disease world, there would be pockets, right? And
Right,
that's where the
correct.
pocket,
Yep.
where you'd have big numbers in certain areas,
Mhm,
and then you would
mhm.
have pockets where it was lower in other areas because they wouldn't be affected by it. There's a lot to understand there. How much does the state of North Dakota invest in wildlife research? Do you know? Is it a quantifiable number?
It's been a lot the last, probably 8 years, I would say. Like I have a 7-year turkey study that's going on. We've done sage grouse translocations, things like that. And that's all tied to, the Pittman Robertson funds that
Yep.
we get in. So, every time you buy a gun, pull a trigger, use ammunition, that comes to the federal. And it's every state gets kind of a share of that. And when there's an influx of it, a lot of people were buying guns, buying ammo. There was an excess of funds, and even there's really good agencies, private agencies, like Pheasants Forever, National Wild Turkey Federation. They're all going in for research. So there's lots of pots of money that do this research. And the way I look at it, like our turkey research, we've only had one study that's ever been done on turkeys in North Dakota. We don't really know, a home range. How far does a turkey go? How is their nesting success? So, when I can get money for things like that to answer questions, that's really good. And, we've, as far as the department, we've got white-tailed deer studies going on, elk studies, pine marten studies, everything like that. It's definitely a good time for wildlife research for sure.
Do any of your critters out there thrive when the conditions get terrible?
I mean, a grouse is probably, I wouldn't necessarily say thrive, but they're the best suited for a bad winter. And that's what I would call terrible conditions in North Dakota for sure.
How about the Hungarian partridge? How do they make it through? I mean, they're a covey bird.
They are.
We'll talk quail after this,
Yep.
but they're similar.
Yep. And I was just going to say they're like a quail. So they're in kind of the same cover that a grouse is going to be, that woody cover. They will be in kind of like kochia stands, things like that, but they huddle together. So their basically main defense, like a quail, is to huddle in their big circle and keep each other warm. And they always face outward so they can see danger coming. But yeah, if I get in a blizzard, they're a lot more susceptible than the other uplands birds that we have.
So when people share photos of that whole covey frozen, right, where they're just frozen, they never survive the overnight lows. That's bobwhite quail. I don't know that I've ever seen that same photo of partridge.
Yeah.
Of Hungarian partridge. Have you?
I have, a couple of them. It doesn't happen as much, obviously. They're a little bit bigger, a little bit hardier, but yeah, unfortunately, I've seen that. Yeah.
What does it take to cause that? What's your low temperature? What's your conditions that cause that?
The 3-4 day blizzards, they're, constant, below zero temperature, just 30-mile-an-hour wind, snow coming down, and it's the pictures that I've seen, have been where they're in that cover, but, they're under, snow. People, it's kind of almost like the deer bone story that you said, where you're digging out and coming in spring. Oh, here's a covey of partridge that didn't make it through.
Yeah, we look at this forecast, and there are places down south that are going to be colder than us actually coming up here this week. Yep. And they're just not suited like we are for some of this weather. Now, wildlife and birds and their survival tactics are incredible. But are you concerned about wildlife specifically? Let's talk quail down south. Maybe let's say like Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia, Tennessee, I would imagine those quail probably aren't going to do very good. It depends. I guess I haven't looked how it's going to warm up, if that snow's going to melt pretty fast. But I would imagine, they don't really have the cover that, say like Kansas has more. I guess I would say, like snow escape cover, like for quail.
Yep.
But definitely that was the first thing I thought when all that snow was coming through there. Those quail are in trouble.
Well, here's something though that I will point out. I've been to Kansas a couple of times this year, once during the summer. I've never seen it so lush and green. And then
absolutely.
I hunted down there a couple weeks ago, and I've never seen their habitat so thick. And this is just where I was. So the fact that we had such good rains there in the central part of the country, maybe, just maybe, will save these birds that are going to have to endure, several days of really nasty weather. Now, their hunting seasons are still open. And they might be, depending on where you're listening, they might be open for a couple of weeks. If this nasty weather is there, you may want to consider not pushing those birds right now.
That was kind of a big thing, when South Dakota went to, pheasant season through January. There were some people, well, how come North Dakota can't do that? And, I know it's not that far away, but South Dakota does usually have better winters than we do.
Yeah.
And, it's the less that you can make those birds, again, the analogy, keep their kitchen close to their bedroom. In the wintertime, they want to limit the amount of time they're away from their escape cover, from their winter cover. But if you're hunting that, pushing them, half a mile away, they have to expend that much energy to come back.
To get
and
back,
to keep, the more times get pushed out, come back, that's energy that they could have stored and used up to survive these bad winter events that we have. So,
yeah. Well, I did some more research prior because unlike Al, the producer, I come prepared.
Hey, I looked up the West Nile virus.
Yeah, hey, good for you for chiming in with some data.
He was just trying to make me look wrong, but
no. I've just been waiting for Travis to say those words to me my entire life, and I finally can.
Well done, young man.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well done. Okay, so I did a little research. I typed in how cold I don't remember the words. What can a pheasant survive? And the response I got, pheasants can survive extreme winter temperatures well below zero, even below 20 degrees Fahrenheit or colder, provided they have adequate food, water, and most importantly, dense protective winter habitat. I think water is the one that stands out to me. Like, come on, everything's frozen right now, so I'm not going to believe all that. But then they said their thermoneutral zone. Have you ever heard that before, RJ?
Thermoneutral. No, that's...
Nope, is 40 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning they start burning extra calories below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, relying on stored fat and heavy cover like cattails or cedar trees to stay warm. Yep. Key factors for winter survival include shelter. Dense habitat like cattail sloughs, willow thickets, or shelter belts is essential, allowing them to escape wind and snow. Food availability. Intense cold requires increased food consumption. If food is buried by deep snow more than 12 to 18 inches, for 3 to 4 consecutive days, mortality rates increase. Cold versus snow. It is rarely just the cold that kills pheasants. It is the combination of cold, heavy snow, and lack of food that leads to freezing or starvation. Physical adaptations include pheasants can increase their metabolic. Sorry, reading is hard.
It was a good try. I'm proud of you.
Thanks, guys. Pheasants can increase their metabolic rate by up to 5 times to stay warm and can enter a state of reduced metabolism similar to torpor. I don't know what that means. During cold nights to conserve energy. While they can handle extreme short-term cold, prolonged 3 to 4 day blizzard events that seal off food sources are the most dangerous conditions for pheasants. Would you agree or disagree with anything that AI just told us?
I've never heard about the increased metabolism. I've heard about the torpor though, where they'll hunker down and not move and kind of go into almost a hibernative state. But it
didn't say increase. It said can enter a state of reduced metabolism.
Oh yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
Maybe I read that wrong. Let's go over to bobwhite. I asked the same question for bobwhite quail. Bobwhite quail are cold, hardy, and can survive temperatures as low as -10 to 20 below zero. They are able to endure extreme cold, sometimes even down to negative 30 degrees or lower, provided they have proper, dry, draft-free shelter and adequate food to maintain their energy survival. Protection from wind, snow, and rain is critical. Quail huddle together in groups of coveys to share body heat. Intense cold requires them to consume 25% more energy, making consistent food sources vital. While snow can provide insulation, freezing rain that creates a crust over the snow can trap or prevent them from reaching food. While they can tolerate sub-zero temperatures, they require a dry, protected environment to avoid hypothermia. There we have it.
Yeah.
I feel like it can't paint a broad picture about what each particular bird on each particular property, from Minnesota to Iowa to Kansas to North Dakota to California to Georgia. Obviously, it's different everywhere. You talk about ice. Those are very small areas. How long is that ice going to be there? There's cold that we have here. How long is this going to maintain? Is it really that bad out there? We have very little snow right now. So I would say pheasants are doing okay.
Oh yeah,
I worry about the grouse, RJ. I worry about our grouse right now because of the cold without the snow. So this is going to be something to monitor right now. If you look at where things stand as a whole, it's cold. It punched us in the face, but we didn't get punched, kicked, knocked down for months yet. We've had some cold, but overall, the state of Minnesota has a winter severity index. Does North Dakota have one?
We do look at that.
And where are we at right now based on what the conditions have given us?
I haven't. We usually look at that later, but I was going to say it's been pretty good. I feel like it's been pretty good across, kind of the main pheasant states. I just went to Nebraska a couple of weeks ago, and driving south, it all looks pretty good. I mean, it's still, especially up here, we don't have all the snow that's covering all the food, like you talked about in your research. As long as they don't have to expend all their energy to get to that food, the longer that goes on, the better, for sure.
Yeah. I sense that you are similar to a lot of our listeners. You sound like you've traveled around the country to hunt for upland birds. And I love to hear that. I love when people that make their passion a living, and obviously you're immersed in the wildlife world with your job with the state of North Dakota, but then when you're not working, you're out there traveling and hunting too.
I think you have to stay connected to the resource. I mean, it's getting to be, I get a lot of questions, well, do you hunt? And I feel like that shouldn't even be a question. I mean, that's why you get into this field, not necessarily, I don't just get to go hunting all the time, but I mean, it's my passion. So I need to protect it, do what I can to continue. So my kids can, enjoy it someday too.
Absolutely. That's exactly the way we feel here. And that's why we want to keep this upland hunting tradition alive. I mean, this is our mission, really. And I'm always asking people, what can we do? How can we make it better? You just, at the start of the show, you talked about that we just keep losing habitat. And it's the biggest, number one thing. We can't stress it enough. And yet there's so often where I just feel helpless, and I just feel angry sometimes. And I just read a report coming out of Wyoming about the funding for the sage grouse. Going away. And I have a message that I'm about to send out to the gentleman that was interviewed in that article that works for Wyoming Game and Fish. And I want to see if he might come on the show. You want what we want, RJ, right?
Oh,
you
yeah,
want the exact
absolutely.
same thing. But why can't you just snap your fingers and make it happen?
Money. I mean, money is, and you can't blame someone. Corn and soybeans, at least in North Dakota, are the downfall of pheasants. Say, like in our southeast, that used to be our pheasant stronghold, and there, we used to have over 3 million acres of CRP. Now we're down below 1 million, and CRP, that is kind of a drum that's been beat a lot. It's not the end all for pheasants. They can nest in road ditches. They nest in tree rows, things like that. But it's when you're burning the cattail sloughs, all those wetlands that are being drained. but I get it. A farmer who's connected to the land, diesel costs more money. That tractor is, $1 million. They need to get as much money. That's their livelihood. So finding the common ground where you could have, making your most production money out of your land, and then leaving some pieces for wildlife to enjoy. That's the challenge that we have.
Yeah, I don't know at what point we all come together and stop just making excuses for everybody. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
let's call it what it is. We find a way to make an excuse for everybody. We do.
Yeah, no,
Nobody
you're right.
wants to step on anybody's toes. Nobody wants to upset anyone. But the reality is, everybody is having an effect out there, and the amount of loss that we have. We just said, I want our kids to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Well, there are biologists, possibly some in your department, that believe that you might not have sharp-tailed grouse in the next generation of hunters. In the state of North Dakota.
Yep. Yeah, that's a concern. It really is.
That shouldn't be a concern.
It shouldn't be. I agree.
It means we're not doing our job.
Yeah.
So every time we make an excuse for somebody burning a cattail slough or taking something out and saying, well, they got to do this, And I don't want to sit on a soapbox here, but as a collective whole, we are not preserving what we have on the land. Period.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So whatever excuses anybody wants to make, every one of us have an impact on the land. Every single one of us. And I don't know what to say, RJ. I know you don't want to lose one more acre of habitat out there for wildlife.
I don't. No. And I appreciate your soapbox, and I appreciate the passion behind it, because we need more like-minded people like that. And I'm hopeful. I guess I'll kind of give maybe a ray of hope that our new governor, huge hunter, loves outdoors. He's talking about making state-funded CRP, different conservation easement type things that we could do. He's throwing out ideas, and he's a doer. I think at least in North Dakota, there's going to be some new opportunities for people coming up here.
All right. Well, we'll stay in touch, because I'm intrigued by some of the information you brought forth. Glad to hear that the winter index isn't as bad as it currently feels when you walk outside there.
Yep.
Our birds, our wild critters, maybe, just maybe, they're going to prove to us.
No.
Yeah, they're going to prove to us that the strong survive out there, and that hopefully they're going to pull through this winter okay. The forecast does show some signs of a little bit of a warm up, we'll call it.
Yep.
So little breaks from the extreme cold can go a very, very long way. RJ, anything else that maybe stuck up your craw that you want to throw at us to consider or ponder before we sign off?
With this cold, mid-January is usually the worst time of the year for winter. So just think, in 3 months, we're going to be getting ready for a spring turkey. It's going to be nice and beautiful outside. There's going to be melting snow. You're going to see waterfalls going to be coming back. So we're getting there. Just get through.
We are getting there. Yeah. The days are getting longer.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's lighter when I take my kids to school, and when I pick them up, come home from work now. So it's hope is there.
Yeah.
I feel like when you get these super, super cold days, it just it's so cold, it feels like you are never going to be warm again. It just feels very, but looking at the weather for February, it does feel like warm as in 30 degrees,
Yeah.
Well, I'll take that over negative 30.
Which I was going to say is a 60-degree difference from what it was on Friday.
Yep.
So
a 30-degree sunny day in February, when that sun is a little bit higher in the sky, can melt some of that snow, open up a little bit more ground, find a little bit more food to scratch out there. I know, Al, you're not scratching for food, but those birds are.
What does that mean?
I mean, you're not out there in the wild.
I was going to say, I think my physique looks pretty good, if that's what you're trying to say.
That's not what I'm trying to say. We'll probably get heavy into Pheasant Fest conversation on next week's episode.
Yep.
I'm not entirely sure yet if we've got all the details. I've been talking about it for a couple of weeks now. I apologize. I meant to get into it today. I will get into it next week. RJ, do you go to Pheasant Fest?
I don't. I haven't been. I know a lot of people that do.
This would be the year to go.
I should some year, that's for sure.
Well, maybe this is your year.
We'll see.
We appreciate your time. We appreciate your efforts on the landscape and your fight for wildlife out there. I know a lot of our listeners will be traveling to North Dakota again this coming season, and they're happy to hear that conditions hopefully are going to be good and maybe improving out there on the landscape. Al, appreciate all of your hard work today, and most importantly, I appreciate everybody for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Flesh Podcast.